Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joshua Kessner, and today we're going to be talking about all of the free agency signings, or at least the big ones, that have been signed over the past couple of days in the National Hockey League. And we're going to be talking about the big ones. So we're going to be talking about Steven Stamkos. We're going to be talking about Eric Stahl. We're going to be talking about Milan Lucic. And we're going to be talking about David Backes. Now, before I go into these, I'm going to tell you that this is going to be mostly opinionated. Um, I, I've watched these players play, and I'm sure you could find all the facts and statistics on these players, and you don't need me to regurgitate those for you. This is going to be strictly opinionated on these topics, but that doesn't mean that they aren't valid. But they are opinionated. So, all right, let's get right into it. So, let's talk about the biggest one, the most important one, that is the discussion that has been going on for pretty much ever since last October. The Steven Stamkos decision to stay with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He signed a 8-year contract with the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is a pretty big deal. It's not something that's like a 3-year contract. It's an 8-year contract, which is very impressive. I when I look at all of the teams that could have picked up Steven Stamkos, Tampa Bay has the best team for Steven Stamkos. And here are kind of my reasons why. Number one, the teams that I heard a lot of rumors of teams trying to pick him up were like Detroit, Toronto, obviously, was the big one. I heard a little bit of Buffalo trying to pick him up. I even heard a little bit of Chicago trying to pick him up. But overall, he fits best in Tampa Bay. And here's why. Well, let's start going. Let's go through all the teams here really quick. All right, so Detroit wanted to pick him up. Detroit's still kind of rebuilding. I mean, their team is not there's not a whole lot of young guys on their team, and they're still trying to get those young guys. They have a lot of experience, but they need more young guys. So Steven Stamkos doesn't really fit into that system. Quite just he just doesn't fit as well as Tampa Bay. All right, now let's move on to Toronto. Let's talk about Toronto. Why didn't he sign with Toronto? Because he's from Canada, and everyone's like, well, he would want to play for his hometown, right? Well, Toronto's in a rebuilding phase, and it's a major rebuilding phase. It's not just like, oh, we need to trade some players here and there. No, it's a major rebuilding phase. There's not even any promise that they're going to be in the playoffs next year. Now, if they are, that's great, but they're probably not going to go very far because they're still rebuilding their team. Steven Stamkos has a very good shot of winning the Stanley Cup with Tampa Bay in the next couple of years. So, why would you leave a team that you already have a Stanley Cup potential, like a potential of winning the Stanley Cup, and move to a team like Toronto? It doesn't make sense to me to do that. So that's why he fits better in Tampa Bay. Now let's talk about like Buffalo. Well, Buffalo's I don't know what's up with Buffalo. Now they have Jack Eichel, but I mean, he doesn't fit into their organization really either in terms of play and all that. let's talk about Chicago. Okay, Steven Stamkos in Chicago. Now, that's probably the best fit out of those potential list of choices, but he doesn't fit there as well as he fits in Tampa Bay. Um, he's got a good coach with Cooper. He's got a really good coach in John Cooper. And he's got a good team around him. I mean, they played really quite decently in the Stanley Cup Finals against the Chicago Blackhawks, even though they lost. They played really decently. They didn't play up to their level that they could have, but they still played really decently. Great. They have a great goalie in Ben Bishop. I mean, it's just I don't see the reason in leaving Tampa Bay because you have a very good chance of winning the Stanley Cup. So, out of all of those teams, I mean, Chicago's even in a little bit of a rebuild right now. I mean, they got rid of some players some major components to their team. When they got rid of Brandon Saad, that was pretty much the declaration of we're in a rebuilding phase, in my opinion. Because Brandon Saad was one of the main players who led them and got them all the way to the finals and helped them win a Stanley Cup. Without Brandon Saad, the Chicago Blackhawks would not have won the Stanley Cup. That's just plain and simple. Yes, they had all the other players around Brandon Saad, but he was one of the biggest components in pushing the team forward and getting key goals to pushing them forward into the Stanley Cup Finals. So needless to say, that all means that Chicago is in a rebuilding phase, in my opinion. And I mean, we saw the effects of that this past year in the playoffs. All right, so Steven Stamkos, very good choice to stay in Tampa Bay. I'm not so sure I would have signed an 8-year contract. Maybe would have signed another contract, but like a shorter contract, maybe a 5-year contract or something like that. But 8 years is good. It means he's dedicated to the program, which is good for them. All right, let's move on. We're going to move on to Eric Staal. So Eric Staal is a New York Ranger, or signed with the New York Rangers before the playoffs. And he just signed today, on July 1st, with the Minnesota Wild to a 3-year contract. Now, this is a very interesting move for Eric Staal, but it's an agreeable one, and here's why. Eric Staal didn't really fit 100% into the New York Ranger organization. The play style for the New York Rangers didn't really match with Eric Staal's play style. A little bit too fast for Eric Staal, from what I saw, and don't get me wrong, he still was able to keep up, but it was just a tad too fast of a play style for him. He won faceoffs, which is what New York needed from him, but he didn't score the goals that they wanted from him. And so, if I'm New York, it's understandable that I let him go, because all he did is help you win faceoffs. New York needed to get more young players from drafts anyway into their organization. They need to get rid of some of their players that they keep trading for that are supposedly going to help them win the cup that haven't. So I can understand that letting Eric Staal go. So it's a benefit on New York's end. Minnesota's end, it's a really good benefit too because you get an experienced player who's played in the playoffs, won a Stanley Cup, and not only that, he's a good center and he knows how to win faceoffs. Um, I'm pretty sure. I mean, he can play wing too. He's really good at that. Overall, just a really good overall player for your team. Now, granted, he's more of a playmaker than he is a sniper, at least in today's era, and that might help the Minnesota Wild. Now, the question remains for Minnesota: are you going to get a good goaltender? So yeah, we'll figure that out. But overall, good pickup by Minnesota and good job by New York to let Eric Stahl go. All right, so let's talk about Milan Lucic signing with the Edmonton Oilers. The former LA King signs a 7-year contract with the Edmonton Oilers on July 1st, which is today. Now, this baffles me a little bit that LA let him go. Maybe Milan Lucic wanted to leave LA, which is possible, but I think he liked LA. Maybe the LA Kings didn't find what they asked from him to be up to their par, so to speak, up to their level that they wanted from him. Which, my response to that is, what were you expecting from Milan Lucic? Because he played exactly how Milan Lucic plays in your LA Kings organization by scoring goals and being Milan Lucic and being kind of almost an enforcer role and being kind of a whiny guy to the refs. But he scored goals for you guys. In fact, he was one of the top scorers for the LA Kings. So the question remains, what did you want from Milan Lucic if that's the case? The next question comes from Milan Lucic, or goes towards Milan Lucic, and is, why did you decide to leave LA? Because if you want to move to Edmonton, which is understandable, but why'd you leave LA? Because LA has a decent team. They're not the Stanley Cup team that everyone makes them out to be anymore, but they're a decent team. It honestly baffles me a little bit why LA let him go. Now, on the Edmonton side of this is a great pickup. He scores goals, and he plays with experience under his belt, and he is an overall phenomenal player. As much as I don't really like Milan Lucic, he is a phenomenal player. And on top of that, he's going to be playing with the greats of Connor McDavid, with the great all-star ability of Connor McDavid. Now, the question remains, will this get them to the playoffs next year? And in all likelihood, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure this will get them to the playoffs next year. However, I will say this. However, if they do make the playoffs, they will make the playoffs. But that doesn't mean they're going to win the Stanley Cup. I have other teams who I predict will win the Cup way before Edmonton wins a Cup. Now, I could be wrong, because I'm wrong a lot of the time in the NHL, which is what's so great about the NHL. So you can't predict what's going to happen. But this is a good opportunity for young players on Edmonton to grow and to learn from a player who has won a Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins. And overall, this is a very, very good opportunity. Now, the other thing is you picked up a sniper, which is very impressive. Overall, that not sure you really needed a sniper, but it's going to help your scoring potential for sure. So, overall, good pickup by the Edmonton Oilers. Not sure what the LA Kings were thinking, but overall good trade. By the way, that was a 7-year contract. So he's signing 7 years to the Edmonton Oilers. Now, let's move on to another very big trade that I don't think anyone really saw coming and honestly surprised me. Probably the most surprising out of all of them. David Backes of the St. Louis Blues, captain of the St. Louis Blues, signs a 5-year contract. 5 years to the Boston Bruins. That is the most surprising signing I think I've seen so far out of this entire year. Even above the Steven Stamkos sign. Here's why this is so interesting to see. David Backes, who was the captain of the St. Louis Blues, was one of the players who pushed the St. Louis Blues so far into the playoffs. Well, I shouldn't say so far into the playoffs, but he pushed them into a very, very, very good position in the playoffs. And he pushed them past their rival, the Chicago Blackhawks. He did not just do this on the ice, he did this off the ice. He is a true leader through and through. And even though he may be really good on the ice, his off-the-ice leadership is what impressed me the most. Because he was one of the reasons that he pushed his team to where they were last round. Now, they may not have won a Stanley Cup, and they may not have gotten to where they wanted to be, but they still did really, really well overall. So, I mean, he got them all the way to the Western Conference Final. That was honestly really impressive. And to play against the San Jose Sharks, who were just on their game that series, was quite impressive. Now, they may have been a better matchup against the Pittsburgh Penguins, but that doesn't matter. They didn't get to the finals. But it was a very good series overall. I'm kind of surprised that St. Louis let him go, because he was one of the leaders and one of the reasons that they moved on to where they were. And to sign a 5-year contract with the Boston Bruins, who definitely need a little bit of leadership and definitely need some help on their team, just signed an amazing player to their roster. David Backes is the equivalent of Jonathan Toews. Probably not as calm and collected as Jonathan Toews. Or should I say, who he may not have the exact leadership ability of Jonathan Toews, but he is definitely an equivalent to him. And the Boston Bruins just picked up an amazing leader for their team. Now, the question remains for the Boston Bruins, is this a soiled opportunity for David Backes? I don't think it is. I think this will help the Boston Bruins dramatically. The question is, will they actually play this upcoming season? Because last season they quit halfway through the season and thought they were going to make the playoffs, and they didn't. So there is that. Overall, I think this is a good trade for Boston. St. Louis, I kind of question because I don't think you get very far without David Backes anyway. So I'm not really sure what they're thinking in St. Louis, but that's not the player I would have traded. So yeah, overall, not the player I would have traded. So the St. Louis Blues, I don't understand what you're doing. You and LA don't. I don't understand what you guys were doing with your trades. New York Rangers with Eric Stahl, I understand, and Tampa Bay Lightning, props to you because you needed to sign Steven Stamkos, and Steven needed to stay in Tampa Bay. So overall, I'm really impressed with those trades. I'm just kind of baffled by a couple of the teams on why they decided to trade those players. David Backes and Milan Lucic specifically. So that is all I want to talk about right now. If you have any of either free agents, trades, anything you want me to talk about going on in the NHL, doesn't have to be free agents or trades, just anything in the NHL that you want me to talk about in my next podcast, leave a comment down below. I'm going to be doing these as much as I possibly can. Talk about the big stuff going on in the NHL, big changes. I'm thinking for the next podcast, what I might talk about is I might talk about Las Vegas getting a team. Probably we'll talk more players, that kind of thing. I don't know. Overall, that's on my list of potential things to do. But if you have anything that you want me to talk about, definitely leave it in the comments down below because I will talk about it. If I have enough knowledge on it, I will talk about it. And so, yeah. Anyways, guys, that's all for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Leave a like down below if you want to see more of these. I plan on doing many more of these as time goes on. And yeah, so thanks for listening and tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next one.